But first, I want to talk about a man who should never have succeeded. Never, if you listen to the left, and never if Australians really were the bigots that this man's enemies claim. Australia's most successful broadcaster ever quit radio this morning. Here's how Alan Jones informed his audience on Sydney's 2GB.
We are living in the world of coronavirus, and the most repeated statement we hear is, we must listen to the experts. Well, the experts are telling me in no uncertain terms, and not for the first time, I might add, and I quote, this is my letter from last week, Alan, continuing with the present workload is seriously detrimental to your health. I've listened to the experts, and I'm taking this opportunity to indicate to my radio family that I will be retiring from radio at the end of this month.
Now, Alan is 79 and has indeed been battling bad health and for a long time spent a lot of time in hospital, particularly with terrible back pains. I'm not sure that's the whole picture. I'll talk about that later, particularly with my old colleague at 2GB and Alan's old colleague, Steve Price, coming up in the show. Now, what I'm about to say, this is not going to be a puff piece, and I'm not sure that Alan will like all that I have to say. But the most important thing first is to be clear about how amazing a career Alan Jones has had. Jones quit today after winning 226 ratings in his time slot. That's incredible. And he quit with the respect, if not quite the love, of both sides of politics, with both the Prime Minister and Labor leader Anthony Albanese calling in today to the show of a Conservative broadcaster who's had huge political influence.
You've always spoken your mind to everybody, including me over the years. You've always done the right thing by your country, and we're very proud of that.
We have political differences, but on a personal level, you're someone I respect.
So how on earth did his amazing success happen? I mean, Alan Jones did not grow up privileged. His mum was a teacher, his dad was a farmer up in Queensland. And this connection can make him very emotional, as we saw when he promised last year to fight for farmers in the drought.
We will fight because I have been exactly where the people of Burke are. My old man would be ashamed of me if I didn't fight. I can't speak for Canberra. Take a break.
Alan Jones, by the way, is actually an emotional guy, passionate. That's why he sometimes has got carried away and said things he's regretted. But back to his career. Alan started off as a teacher. He wasn't bad at tennis either. But what's incredible is that from this background and from just coaching kids at school, he somehow managed to become coach of the Wallabies, coaching our national rugby side to their first win against New Zealand, in New Zealand, and then coaching the Balmain NRL team. And in the meantime, Alan Jones tried to get into politics for the Liberals, but either couldn't get pre-selected or elected. He worked, meanwhile, as a speechwriter for Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser. In 1985, he decided to become a radio host with 2UE. It was such a huge success that 2GB owner John Singleton decided, well, look, if I can't beat this guy, I'll buy him. He hired Jones for 2GB, paid him a colossal amount to switch in 2001, and Jones's huge audience followed him. But Alan, being a Conservative, well, the left, particularly on the ABC, tried their damndest for years to destroy him, to ridicule him, belittle him, attack him. One of the most disgusting attempts, and the most foolish, was a book by longtime ABC journalist Chris Masters, sneering that Alan Jones must be gay and implying that this was somehow sinister. Said at the time, I thought that wink, wink, nudge, nudge was so sick, particularly coming from ABC types, and incredible. It was incredible that leftist journalists like David Marr, himself gay, joined in this jeering. Now, Alan doesn't talk about such stuff, and why should he? But I say this, the people who hope that this would turn Jones's audience against him, that his audience, must be all bigots and homophobes, what a shock those fools got. Jones' audience is not like that. They're more broad-minded. The critics underestimated them. These are basically people who aren't as rich as Jones at all. It's so strange that Jones speaks for them, but he does. Because like him, they believe in Australia. They believe in working for a living. They believe in fair play. They're basically good people. Not fashionable people, but good people. And big surprise, most Australians are good. And Alan fights for them. He's in fact a noisier, more effective, more passionate champion of Australian workers than most of the media left, which is exactly, I think, what drives most of the left nuts about him. But times have changed. Jones's enemies have got stronger and his employers, I must say, weaker. Alan did make mistakes. There have been defamation payouts that have tested the wallets and the patience of 2GB's owners, particularly now that money is so tight. But what the left pounced on most was on mistakes Alan made in talking about women of the left. Small mistakes mostly, that in most people would be forgiven. For instance, he said this about Labor Prime Minister Julia Gillard.
The woman's off her tree. And quite frankly, they should shove her and Bob Brown in a chaff bag and take them as far out to sea as they can and tell them to swim home.
Now, that figure of speech was said to be somehow encouraging violence against women. It's this new brigade of professional offence seekers, encouraging violence against women. I mean, shocking. Forget that Bob Brown was actually included in that chaff bag. And Jones said in a private meeting that someone sneakily taped that Gillard, her father, would die of shame of her, which was not nice. Not nice. And Jones did apologise for that many times. But of course, the left didn't want his apologies. They wanted him silenced. And a new tactic was born. A new tactic to threaten his advertisers on 2GB. Leave, stop sponsoring him, or we'll stop buying your products, or we'll smear you, or whatever. Because it wasn't enough that his haters did not want to listen to him. They wanted his own audience to be stopped from listening to him. And I'm afraid to say that campaign had some success.
2GB has pulled all advertising from the breakfast program following remarks about the Prime Minister's late father.
And over the years, that campaign kept going. Last year again, when Alan said that New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, the saint of the left, should have a sock down her throat. Again, a bad figure of speech. But the advertising boycott cost 2GB millions of dollars. And it looked last year, for a while there, that it would cost Alan his job. I think it was Nine Chairman Peter Costello that finally made sure that he signed a new contract for 2 years. But I want to point out the hypocrisy here. The ABC has led this charge against Jones and his so-called violent language. Yet it's the ABC itself that meanwhile happily has a presenter of a new documentary series who actually said that she wanted a political opponent to die. Miriam Margolyes said she wanted British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to die of coronavirus.
I had difficulty not wanting Boris Johnson to die. I wanted him to die. And then I thought, that reflects badly on me.
OK, so that's perfectly OK for the ABC, but what Alan Jones said, oh, that's terrible. Drive him out. Hypocrisy, hypocrisy. But Alan Jones succeeded better than any of his critics, and now leads on his own terms. And I admire this man's courage against everything.
My listeners know who I am. They know the kind of program I present. They know whether the things that are said about me in terms of me as a broadcaster are accurate. They, unlike my critics, have heard the program. The critics, of course, have other agendas. They're entitled to those agendas. I just let them go, like the Concorde. They make a lot of noise momentarily, but you let them pass. My listeners know who I am, what I'm standing for, and it's the old Kerry Packer axiom. You know who you are, your friends know who you are, and the rest can go to hell, and you just get on with your job.
Now, of course, I don't agree with Alan Jones on everything. I mean, totally against you, Alan, on fracking. And I don't agree with how he's sometimes said things. But, boy, I've made mistakes too. It's just part of being human. And in judging Alan Jones, you must, as with anyone, consider the whole. In his case, you certainly have to consider his passion, his commitment to the country, his intelligence, his research, and his compassion. Most people have no idea how much charity this bloke has given and how much charity work he's done. Alan Jones said to him in a text this morning, he's a great Australian. What I like best is that the people he speaks to are in their way great Australians too. And he has made that clear. They're so much better than Jones's critics believed possible. I love how Alan Jones has shown that.